Welcome to Entrepreneurship at Rowan, an official production of the award-winning Rowan Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We cover the entrepreneurial pulse of Rowan students, faculty, and alumni. Prepare to be Rowan proud.
Hello, Rowan University. My name is Madison Miller, and I am your host for Season 5 of the Entrepreneurship at Rowan podcast, where we will be focusing on creative entrepreneurs. Today, we're going to be kicking off our first episode with Rowan alum Michael Jasorka, founder of Bombshell Comics. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Madison. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you today. I'm really looking forward to learning more about your journey from, publishing your comics in Oak Hall here at Rowan to having your own brand. I think you're somebody who a lot of students are really going to be able to relate to and be inspired by. So I'm really excited to learn more about your journey as, artist and an entrepreneur.
Awesome. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So to get started, I think we'll just dive right in. I'm really curious about how you were able to build your brand with Bombshell, and I guess where your comic book journey really started from.
I really started my journey really from college. I was independently studying at Rowan with Nancy Ohanian, who is a longtime illustration professor. With that study, I was able to really focus more into my passion of comics. I worked in a comic book shop in high school and basically spent my whole savings in high school on comics. But it really took me a while to really gain the confidence. And Nancy really helped me do that. And my senior portfolio show was geared towards comic book creation. Even though the department didn't teach it, it was an area of illustration that I was just so passionate about. And I really went into my own direction to really kind of learn and grow, and really started self-publishing at Oak Hall, as you said. And I went to a local comic shop that was brand new at the time there in Glassboro, and we did a release party. I even printed my books at Westby and really kept it pretty localized, and really kind of actually designed my brand in a class as well, which is so interesting. And my Bombshell brand was just kind of just came off working this assignment that I was doing. And my professor at the time, Brian Butler, was really reactive to it. So I kept it even in through those years and never really decided to kind of wane off it. Recently, I've had a little logo change, but the brand has been really basically the same. And I had not too shortly after college, I had moved to the West Coast and began working in advertising and comics education for a nonprofit. So with that behind me, I was still able to really still keep pumping into my self-publishing. To answer your question about how I really worked the brand, I think a lot of it is attributed to being around now almost 20 years and building an audience now out of what would be called regional comics. And the region that I've been really focusing on is in southern New Jersey, in Cape May County there in Wildwood, New Jersey, was a place that really touched me when I was young and really was a ripe theme to dive into, to really marriage my love and my passion with this ever-changing medium and form that is comics. Only a couple of years ago, I've moved now back to Brooklyn after reconnecting with someone I went to childhood school with, and we got married, and she was in the Brooklyn school system here. So I moved back to the East Coast after being in the West Coast for over a decade.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I did what I called a tri-state roller skating art tour, in which I put up my roller girl drawings into roller rinks in the tri-state area of New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. And I think I even did some shows in Delaware. But that was prior to moving to California. So I really kind of worked and tried to find a new outlet to expose my art at the time. And I think that's always kind of really helped me understand that my audience is in a niche and is in my loves and my passions. So I just kind of kept that ball rolling, and that actually had gotten me an international roller skating publishing contract, believe it or not, at that time. So as I moved to California, I was still connected to the East Coast, and kind of really, again, kept this fervor for trying new things and really working what that model was and discovering it along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. I didn't even know that the roller rink art was even, a scene, but that's really cool. Are the artwork still up in roller rinks in the area?
They're no, unfortunately they probably aren't. Maybe a rink or two would probably have a work or a piece or two, but I would think a majority of them wouldn't, because they were kind of set up as I was exhibiting them, and they would be in like a party room or a common room that those roller rinks would have for me, and I would sell them there on the spot to roller skaters. So a lot of them had made their way out there, and even when I went to the West Coast, I was able to have some shows, and there's a roller skating rink that's kind of famous in Burbank that has my roller game up in one of the rooms. So they're around. They're just not as prevalent as they probably were when I was doing the tour.
Yeah, no, that is so cool. That's such a interesting way to put your art out there, and I feel like roller rinks and comics, like it kind of I can see how it goes together.
Totally. Yeah, it was a site specific kind of idea that I had that really I think really being at Rowan and in a really inclusive space like Westby was the start to a lot of that thinking, and it was just an awesome time to grow and graduate at 2007, even though the recession was upon us in '08. But it was still a trying time to try things that are new and interesting. So it was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So you and your artwork have been all over the country. Where do you find, I guess, inspiration for your books and your art? And how do you continue to create things when either you might not immediately have an idea for a story or a piece, or, there is a recession, you feel these external pressures from the world around you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think I'm just lucky that I grew up in a place where my imagination was where I was maybe safe and I felt at home with. And I think, being near a roller rink, 5 minutes from a roller rink in my hometown, again, working at a comic shop when I was young, and being, just a big reader of comics, even still. And really, I think I just kind of kept tapping just my interest and really wanting to do something that involved my heart a little bit more, because I knew that if I was going to do something and spend so much time that the comics take to create, that I really had to love it, and really had to love it to spend my own personal time on those projects. So I really just kept tailoring what I was doing to finding myself again now making comic books about Wildwood now, and really thinking about that audience more defined, and really thinking to how I can work history into that and feel those things for a pulse in comics, because nonfiction in comics is really still pretty unexplored. Let's say it's out there, but it's not as. And I think even with American history, it really hasn't really gotten popularized. But there are a lot of great cartoonists who are considered journalists that really work that aspect into it. And I even find myself like loving more about the journalistic aspect today than more than drawing sometimes, as I just get excited about finding information that I didn't think I would find, and putting, history together that maybe people hadn't before. And I think that's what excites me more now, is telling real stories about real people and real places.
That is so cool. I love that. As a journalist myself, I totally relate to, the real stories, the real people. I love finding all that out. That's so cool. I didn't even know that there was, I guess, a journalistic aspect to comic books. I feel like a lot of people, when they think comics, they think, Marvel or DC or these like, superheroes and stuff. But I think it's so cool that you're sort of tapping into, real people and real life things. I think it's amazing.
It's fun. It's really fun, and I feel like it's really where I really found my voice. And I'm 2 years shy of 20 years now self-publishing, so it's taken me quite a bit to really focus in on it. But I never gave up into discovering myself through it too. And I think with now, even where I'm going next is working more locations and people and researching people that I grew up around, or places I went to as a kid, that I can still harness that kind of creativity and imagination towards.
I feel like a lot of students or a lot of people in general are creative people, but they're sort of intimidated by doing it for a living like you do, due to, a stereotype of, I guess, being like a starving artist. I feel like I hear that all the time. So how do you manage doing what you love and putting your effort into these books and these comics and, what you're doing and following your passion, while also handling, I guess, the financial and the business tasks that come with doing creative work and doing it, for a living?
I attribute my success in advertising coming from comics, because at the time when I moved to LA, which is the center, for a lot of film and commercial based work, and meeting people that were already in that industry at the time, they were more interested that I made comics than that I could storyboard, which was fascinating. But they also put two and two together to say that, if you're doing comics, you should be able to storyboard. And really, I think a lot of my success came out of meeting the right people at the right time there, and really just delivering and providing a service to that industry. So I still do that primarily to really make a lot of my money, and it has been a part of the cycle that I find myself through, just being a storyteller, that I can use my talents to that degree into providing a service, while also working the other hat of being an educator and being a author and publisher. So I've really juggled a few different hats, and I still do. And I think I don't think it's more out of necessity. I think it's more out of just that I'm interested to keep doing these things. And but I totally understand any artist to think to, like, the challenges of maybe moving across the country and going somewhere and trying something like that. And it was a sacrifice to move away from my family and people I knew and respected. So, I think there's points in your life where you have to make these sacrifices that you don't know how well they might turn out. And I'm really happy that I did, and that I found myself in nonprofit and teaching kids my passion of comics, and juggling all this at once. And it just kind of became a cauldron of again, that passion that I have to tell stories. And really, I think it also just utilizing technology enough was also a part of it, but also being one step out, because I still traditionally illustrate. And I think a lot of people found that intriguing, especially different directors and things, because they work in digital forms a lot, and they've worked with people who use digital tools. So again, I'm kind of off of the fringe of even traditional tools that I think have allowed me to stand out, let's say. And I think those things are important to consider for any artist, and really to be open to opportunity. And I can't tell you how many times drawing in the public has really helped me, and sitting down somewhere in a cafe in West Hollywood or Echo Park or something, that really came through because someone came up and said, "Hey, do you do storyboards?" And So that was a common thing there. So I can't explain or can't go further into how much California had really propelled that and propelled my career into advertising. So advertising helps. It's my main bread and butter, but I've spread myself with these other passions, and I think that's a smart thing now. But to be versatile for an artist today is I think it's a part of the picture of the entrepreneur, maybe even more than ever, that you do more than one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so inspiring that you're able to juggle so many different hats and to be able to, be an advertiser, but also be able to be an educator and an artist. I think it's really admirable and really speaks to time management a lot. What would you say are some skills that you've developed managing your time and managing different projects go?
I would say certainly staying up on really how much I could put into the project per day was something I kept miniature goals with, and saying to myself, okay, I have this page and I want to get so much of that done. I think, holding yourself to a deadline, is really a part of the process. I think, especially as a self-publisher, because you're not having a real publisher or an editor, breathing down your neck about how fast that might get produced. But you get to a point where the application of drawing becomes like a secondary nature to the ideas that you come up with. And so as a writer, you're kind of, you're working to both your strengths and weaknesses to the form of telling pictures and words together. So as I constantly kind of kept studying the drawing form in my application, I kept working on my research and my writing skills and trying to find out really what would be the next story to tell, and really how to tell it, because comics are just, they're a form all of its own, and really you're playing with the time that someone experiences your book, and also allowing them to lend their own imagination to it. So I think really pushing that together and staying on that for myself had definitely been a part of a routine process. And so I've really actually, in my entire career of publishing comics too, I've always worked on more than one story at once. And I felt like that has kept my momentum, because once I finish something, I'm still amongst another project. And I've kept that momentum going throughout my career. And I'd like to stay busy, and I feel like it helps harness your talent even further to keep nurturing it. And I think, I think that's for both regard of, writing and drawing. It's, you really want to keep working it and finding yourself in it. And I think that's a lot of great art is really discovery. And it's being open to discovery too, that has kept me really fascinated by moving forward and discovering. And so it's a routine, but it's also it's just a joy, and the joy is the process. And it's really never gotten old for me, because every project is new and different, and there's so many ways to tell a story in comics that kept me interested in it.
I think it's so true. Every story has different challenges and different aspects to it, which I think is so important to realize. And it's really cool that you manage a lot of different things at the same time. In the midst of working on one project, do you ever get ideas for your other projects through that, I guess?
Yeah, I think there is times that does come through, especially if they're pretty similar. And, I just did a few Wildwood books back to back, and, finding that, different players had different hands in some of the aspects that I was playing with allowed me to perhaps research them a little differently and go through different sources a little differently, which was really interesting. How to tailor the questions I needed to get out of the people that were living that maybe could answer them. So I feel like in a lot of the process of moving from project to project, I feel like, yeah, at times there are things that maybe subconsciously, inform what I'm doing maybe more than consciously, but there's definitely been times that there's a conscious decision because perhaps that worked in a piece before, or again had touched somebody in a way and had gotten feedback on whether they liked that aspect of it, or whether or not to reuse something like that, or and what's interesting about it is being the writer and artist is that when people react to the books, it's a process into really listening to them and how they've experienced it. And I think that just is always fascinating because there's things that I maybe didn't mean to do, and yet the reader had gotten that out of the book. And I really love that part of storytelling, especially with comics, that in between every panel is the reader's imagination working out the information. And therefore, everybody's experience is pretty much different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is so cool how people can, everyone could view the same picture or video and like have different experiences that they take away. I think that is so special about art, and I think it's something that makes being a creative entrepreneur so special as well. I know that you were talking about self-publishing, and I know you had mentioned that that's something that you did while you were still a student here at Rowan. Would you be able to talk me through that process a little bit? Because that's something that, students who maybe they want to do something similar to this, they could get started doing right away.
Oh, that's a great question. I think, when I started there at Rowan, what was wonderful having, a bunch of classmates was getting the feedback, in class, because I was actually working my pages for assignments, and it allowed me to have a lot of feedback that I wouldn't have had if I was just at home and in my own space. So there's the community aspect of getting that feedback and really keeping me on track was a great way to start there on campus and really share what I was doing. And I think there's you build a lot of excitement around it through that environment, and really having a goal, having a plan to the length of that book, and really having utilized. And at the time, there was a fee that you would pay into the printing service at S5E. So I had actually just printed my book through Rowan at the time, and at the time there weren't any really limits on the books that I could print. So I may have changed that afterwards. I'm not sure, but I definitely printed a bunch through the Rowan department printers, and really had the faculty behind me about doing this because they hadn't seen it in quite a while, or if at all. But I'm sure someone had printed some brochures and things over the years with their art in it. It just wasn't so much as putting a full color 32-page comic book together. But I made it happen. It was my junior year that I basically spent the summer finishing that book and brought it back my senior year to print. And really in that process, I wanted to think locally. So I outreached to this new comic book shop that was opening that year. And they're still open. They're called the Comic Book Shop, or Comic Book Store. They're right there on Main Street in Glassboro. And I know they're still there because I walked in not too long ago and left some more books and told them I was still going, which was really cool. I had my release party there, and so I, invited, of course, everybody out to campus and from campus, which was walking distance, and we had a great turnout. And I immediately submitted my books to what were some contests and things, some self-publishing contests that were out there at the time. One of them was run by the creators of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they were offering like a publishing kind of opportunity where they would help fund your self-published book. So I tried some avenues of that as well, and I really just worked consignment, and going back home and up north in Warren County, where I grew up, I was able to consign my book into some more stores, and just kind of kept it on a pretty driven model.
you were able to leverage a lot of the connections and opportunities that you had from the community, which I think is such a skill to have, because, if you're making art, you want people to read it and be impacted by it. And I think one of the biggest ways is, through the local community. So it's amazing that you were able to involve, Rowan and Glassboro in that part of your journey.
It was awesome. And I was a resident assistant too. And I think a part of me growing socially was really becoming an RA and seeing my campus firsthand and meeting younger students each year. And, reflecting back on where I was my freshman year as a sophomore, junior, senior in freshman dormitories, or, it was an awesome experience to be like a mini mentor and also be just open to feedback and really being a part of a community like Rowan is and was then. And, it was a perfect place to start and begin. And what's funny is I have a classic Glassboro State College poster on my wall today, and I had found it at Westby all those years ago in 2006 or so, and on the poster it says Glassboro, a place to begin, and on that shot is Oak Hall, and you can see my room window in this poster. So I thought it was just quaint and interesting, and that I found that poster at the time, and now I keep it and hold it pretty dear because I do attribute Rowan to really my start.
I almost got chills when you were talking about the poster. It's like you were meant to find that almost with the room, even if that you could see your room. That's crazy. Well, speaking of college students, I do think we only have time for about one more question, but what I wanted to leave off with was, what's like one piece of advice that you would give to creative students who are in university right now and they might want to build their own brand or sort of do what you do for a living, but they don't know where to get started? What's a piece of advice that you would give to them?
Hold the faculty and the students around you in the highest regard into going into the world, because their feedback and the guidance that they can offer you could be something that is, absolutely so special and integral to where you go and become. I will say this last story. I was in my freshman figure drawing class with Herb Appleton, and he's been on faculty for now, I think, more than 40 years at Rowan. And he's an incredible professor. And I remember him saying to the class, you know what, someone should make a graphic book about all the motels in Wildwood. Wouldn't that be an interesting thing? And so I sat on that idea for over 15 years and really had thought about his words. Not only, he was just an amazing professor and starting, my education through him, but that idea of, and even my connection to Wildwood at the time was strong because I stayed there as a child. So I was just listening. I was always listening. I was always open to be around students who even weren't studying what I was studying, being around graphic designers and printmakers and other different forms, I think also really helped. So, if you're a student there, I feel like just spread your wings and make your connections there, and keep these people in your Rolodex, because you don't know where you're going to need them or collaborate with them down the line, and really how you'll meet up with them maybe in the future, and with what kind of project you don't know.
I've definitely seen that in my time here at Rowan. I'm a senior now, and it really is such a special place where I feel like everyone is able to come together regardless of major or passions, which, I feel like everybody is really connected, which I think is so special. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for sharing your story with us today. I learned so much, and I definitely feel, inspired as a creative person and just as a student who's about to enter, the real world.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And to anyone who's listening, stay tuned for the rest of the season to hear more about how entrepreneurship and creativity kind of go hand in hand.
Thank you for listening. Rowan is proud to be an official knowledge hub of the International Council for Small Business. Our AACSB award-winning entrepreneurship programs challenge students to solve real problems in bold and impactful ways. If you're interested in supporting entrepreneurship at Rowan or want to get more involved by hiring an intern, speaking to a class, or being featured as a case study, contact us at rcie@rowan.edu.